From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson
Jr.
Do not forget the Junior. It's very important to remember the JR at the end of that name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And today, a new week for us. We do have another fire episode because there was a lot to talk about as the Saints open their 3-day mandatory minicamp. Before we get into that, how you feeling today?
Doing good, Sean. You know, it's Monday, first day. Oh, no, I lied. It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
That shows you what kind of week it is already. Yeah. Goodness gracious.
That's all right. Yeah, look, Tuesday is here.
A good Tuesday.
It is a good Tuesday. Saints opened up minicamp. You know that's the way we have to go with the big picture today because it wasn't just mandatory minicamp. 2 guys returned to action. They call it mandatory for a reason. Coach said he expected both Lattimore and Kamara to be at practice today, and number 23 and number 41 were there in action for the Saints. So that's where we got to start here today.
Absolutely. And not only were Alvin Kamara and Marshon Lattimore present at practice, it was a rarity, Sean. We actually got to talk to both of them.
I did not expect that. I didn't think we were going to get both of them. I didn't even know if we were going to get any of them, but we got both of them back to back. It was something.
Right. Getting one of them is a rarity, but getting both on the same day, this is truly a day to mark on the calendar. But in getting to talk to them, Marshon Lattimore said something interesting about kind of the wild up and down offseason that he and the Saints had, and we're going to let you guys listen to that right now.
It was just we had a situation, a personal situation that we worked through, but it wasn't like I wanted to leave or he wanted me to leave and nothing like that. It was just, I don't know how y'all looked at it, but it was just a situation that happened, like, you know, personally, but it wasn't nothing like that, like I wanted to leave. I told him like, I don't want to leave. No, I ain't got no problem with it. You know, it's all business at the end of the day. Like, I can't have no personal problem because, you know, he want to trade me or something. Like, it is what it is. You know, everybody know they come here and what can happen. You know what I'm saying? I've been hurt for 2 years, so I understand. You know, people probably don't think, you know, I'm the same type of player, whatever the case may be, but all I got to do is prove to people that I am, you know, so that's really falling on me, to be honest.
So listening to Marshon Lattimore kind of talk about the possibility of him being traded, what was your reaction to hearing that?
You know, well, I was kind of in that second group behind him, and if you know Marshon, you probably just heard, you know, his personality is very laid back, very low key. So it was something that I had to really kind of peek in to listen, to try to hear exactly what he was saying, because they'd been through a lot this offseason. There'd been so much uncertainty surrounding him. There'd been so much unknown surrounding him. And there was the move, obviously, with the contract, which was during the season last year. Obviously, he had gotten hurt against Minnesota. We hadn't seen him again. And then ever since then, it just been this kind of just elongated sort of gray area between Marshon Lattimore and the Saints organization. Obviously, they made the contract move to make it easier to facilitate a trade, but there was never any sort of leak of any kind that the Saints were ever close to really pulling the trigger on any kind of deal. We went through the market for comparable cornerbacks, what teams got when it came to trading of cornerbacks, and it really didn't stack up as far as we were concerned in terms of what the sort of compensation the Saints could realistically receive, which I think ultimately is what it boiled down to. Can they get a good compensation for a player like Marshon Lattimore? So it always made it tough for me because I was asked about it all the time, you know, to get a read on the situation. The organization was somewhat vague. You know, they were kind of giving us bits and pieces whenever we were able to kind of talk to them. I know there was that one soundbite earlier in the offseason where DA said he hadn't talked to Lattimore since the season ended. And then there was a little recently said they met to kind of open the line of communication. You know, Loomis had said a few things here and there, kind of hinting at stuff, but you just never really got a definitive direction either way, which way they were going. Lattimore says he was not interested in getting traded. He wanted to be here. He didn't want to leave. The organization wants to make that move. That's on them. He's not mad about it. Everyone understands what happens when you sign up to play professional football. So here we are. When he had to be here, he was here. It is what it is. It's like I said a couple pods ago. couple pods. It was probably a couple months ago. He's a Saint till he isn't. And right now he is a Saint. And I will say this, he was on the field from the very first defensive snap with the first team, just like he's always been when he's been here with the Saints. So I understand, and even for me, it is a little bit of a weird situation. Like, was there tension? Was there not tension? Was there just one of those things where just there was so much unspoken and neither side was really revealing too much that we kind of had to draw our own conclusions? But the bottom line, at the end of the day, when it was time for him to show up, he showed up. Now, looked like he was in decent shape. Got beat early in practice on a throw to Chris Olave. Got beat another time as well, but also had a nice pass breakup that prevented the Saints offense from getting into field goal range later in practice. So a fuzzy situation, no doubt about it. But the bottom line is Lattimore's here. And according to him, he wants to be here. And according to him, there is no animosity. And according to anyone we've talked to about this situation, it all roads lead back to the fact that here we are in June. No trade was ever done. Yes, there was an adjustment to the contract. It gave him the option, but that option was never executed. So away we go with the Saints, and obviously Marshon Lattimore wants to be the number one cornerback in the NFL. He's got to stay healthy for that to happen. He's missed 17 games the last 2 seasons. So what do I make of the situation? Felt weird, but today didn't. He was back on the field, and he looked like Marshon Lattimore for the most part.
He sounded like Marshon Lattimore, too. I think at one point it kind of came up, the cornerback rankings in the NFL, and he quickly said, hey, I'm number one.
Yeah.
You know, still very confident in his abilities, and he has the right to be so, seeing what he has been for this team over the last few years. And to me, it's just good to see, like you just mentioned, that apparently, if you believe what's coming from both sides, there's no hard feelings after what really was an awkward offseason between the team and Lattimore. You know, all of a sudden, no, we're not looking to trade him, or, oh, you know, everyone's available for the right price and this and that. So after everything, it's good that, you know what, when he needed to be here, he showed up. Dennis Allen said at the beginning of his press conference, you know, Marshon has always been here when it was mandatory to be here. So he kind of expected Marshon to show up.
And he did. And look, they're running basically the same system. And he's a man-to-man corner. He knows what to do. He knows how to play man-to-man cornerback. And so it wasn't like he was behind anything, or it just felt like there was a distance between the organization and him. And the longer they felt like we hadn't heard from him, the longer it felt like, you know, is he out of sight, out of mind? Is the organization going in a different direction? But as it got closer and closer to the offseason program, and then now, obviously, the mandatory minicamp, he's here. And that's all we can really say about that, because it really was much ado about nothing. And barring some late training camp surprise, I think he suits up for the Saints in 2024. And look, when he's healthy and he can play full 17 games or the majority of the season, generally speaking, the Saints defense is better. Not generally speaking, they're better with him than without him. So we'll see what happens. And they're going to need him this year. If he's going to play, he's going to be here, and he's going to be a Saint. They're going to need him to play, and not just play, but be a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. So all that to say, 23's back, and he was on the field today.
Exactly. And you mentioned, you know, it's not like he's learning a new system. This defense is still largely the same as it was last year. But the side of the ball that is not the same as last year is the offense. When you got Clint Kubiak coming in, implementing his new offense. And today, Alvin Kamara finally got a taste of that new offense. You know, listening to Alvin Kamara at the beginning of his press conference, he was kind of like, was I here last year doing OTA? He was almost a little defensive, like making it clear he wasn't here last year doing OTAs, but when he needed to be here last year, he was here, and saying this year was kind of the similar deal.
Yeah, and look, he spoke. We're gonna let you hear right now, just in terms of what his first impressions are, just kind of staying connected to the offensive system and kind of getting back into the swing of things today and kind of repping it out.
I'm good, man. It's a new offense. I think I've been in contact with Clint, been in contact with guys. I mean, I have a playbook. I got an iPad, so it's fine. I mean, different. It's different when you go do it, right? You know, looking on paper. Like I've never been really a paper guy. I like getting in there and getting into action and doing it, but nothing's changed from what I've been doing the past couple of years. Dennis
Allen used the word explosive, describing Alvin Kamara in his first day at minicamp today. What did you see from AK, and what did you really make of those comments?
Well, it was interesting comments, the one you just heard. He did, like, you work the locker room. Sometimes the player talks and he's done, but in Alvin's case, he talked. We were there. We walked off, got Lattimore, but he kept talking. It felt like he did like 2 or 3 different waves of interviews over there, so I'm not sure what he said after we left. But you just heard what we just played right there. Physically, he looked looked to be in fantastic shape. He looked swift. He looked smooth. He looked explosive. He looked to be in really good shape. Just watching him just before, early part of practice before they did any teamwork, where he was just kind of just doing the drills. He looked really good from a physical standpoint. But I thought you just heard was a little interesting because he said, it's different when you read it on paper and look at it on paper. I'm not really a paper guy. I have to go out and do it. Well, this is a new system. This isn't like Lattimore. I mean, that's why I've always said it's not whether or not he should or shouldn't be here. It's would he have benefited? And it's an absolute yes. It's an absolute yes. And what I saw today only confirms that fact, because is he behind? I mean, I'll say this. He didn't get the same amount of offensive reps that Lattimore got defensive reps. I only charted 2 carries for Kamara today. Now, I know he was on the field a few more snaps than that, but he had 2 carries. One was for a loss, and one was for a nice gain right off the right tackle of Trevor Penning. But he wasn't getting every single first-team rep at running back. Taysom Hill was getting it. Jordan Mims was getting it. Kendra Miller was getting it. And Alvin Kamara was certainly getting it as well. So is he behind? I do think he's got some stuff to catch up on. I think there's no doubt about that. He would have gotten all the reps today had that not been the case. So that's just sort of the reality of the situation. He hasn't been here the entirety of the OTAs. He's been kind of reading up and staying connected and staying in good physical shape, but he doesn't know the system back and forth yet. He hadn't been able to rep it out yet. And I thought what we saw today, even though he had some moments of, okay, yeah, he looks good. Clearly, to me, like I said, he wasn't on the field as much as Lattimore was, who was in a system, returning to a system that he knows back and forth, frontwards and backwards, all that stuff. So you just got to make progress. Now, hopefully, today was a number of snaps he got. Wednesday, hopefully those snaps go up. And then hopefully by Thursday, those snaps go up even higher. Because make no mistake about it, Kamara is the guy. I'm not sure there's a player on this team that benefits more by this coordinator change than Alvin Kamara with Clint Kubiak, given what he's done with running backs across the NFL, given what he did with Christian McCaffrey, the guy Kamara has been compared to the most his entire career. And given the fact that you look at Alvin's stats the first 4 years of his career, then you look at the last 3 in terms of yards per carry and just how hard he's had to work to be productive in the ground game and even in the pass game. I think the key or the hope is Kubiak unlocks Kamara. So now they see 41 of old as opposed to the last 3 years where, yes, he's been productive, but there has been a little something missing. There's been a little bit of that lack of explosiveness when it comes to, Kamara. So I'm just glad he's back. I'm glad he showed up. I'm glad he's here. And I have no doubt, and DA said it, he's gonna pick it all up. He's gonna be ready when he has to go. It's just a matter of getting on the same page, the timing and the rhythm with this new scheme, this new system, the very very specific way you deal with your offensive linemen and the the landmarks and tracks, whatever you call it when it comes to running the football. So I just think it's a good thing that he's here. Now, would he like to be further along? Would the Saints like him to be further along in the system? They're not going to admit that openly, but I think he could have benefited by being here for the last 10 OTAs.
I mean, definitely. Dennis Allen mentioned at one point today he kind of misinterpreted the protection on one rep, and those are things that are going to happen on your first day at practice in a new system. So would a 10 practice head start have helped Alvin Kamara? It definitely would, but I mean, I don't think there's any reason to panic if you're a Saints fan. Like, he's still got all of minicamp. He's still got the entirety of training camp. He's going to see some action during preseason. So AK is going to figure it out. But in the initial stages, like you mentioned, he only took 2 carries and an entire team period for Alvin Kamara seems incredibly low. So it's going to be a learning process for him, just like the learning process that Derek Carr was talking about last week that the entire team kind of had to go through. It'll be a learning process for the next week or so, but this is an NFL veteran. He's seen a lot when it comes to that position in this league, so he'll figure it out.
He'll figure it out, and if he does, man, there's no telling where this offense can go. Because if you bring that element back, the Kamara of the first 4 years of his career, the 2017 through 2020 Alvin Kamara, back to this offense, I mean, you're talking about a jolt to the offensive system that I think could certainly benefit everyone. So Kamara was back. Lattimore was back. It was an interesting first day for both of those guys. But the bottom line is they were here, and like you said, there's a long way for Kamara to go between now and the start of the regular season where he's going to be able to figure everything out and get the terminology down and get ready to roll.
Right now, the only person who wasn't there was an excused absence was Ryan Ramczyk, the right tackle. Dennis Allen says he's not moving in the right direction or the wrong direction, so you can make of that what you want to. Yeah. But the offensive line, Sean, it's still Penning, Saldiveri, McCoy, Ruiz, and Fuaga, the same unit that we saw coming out of OTAs. Where do you feel like that unit is moving, and how are they doing so far?
It's hard to tell without pads, and even DA even alluded to that today. It's really hard to tell where they would be. I got to see it with pads on. I mean, they've had their moments, but they also had some moments of struggle. The last period of practice, which was different than the previous practices that we're able to see, they did a kind of an end-of-game situation, 58 seconds, one timeout. And it felt like there was a pass rush, but they got to a point and it kind of stopped. The pass rush did. I don't know if they were instructed to do so, but it just felt like the pass rush didn't necessarily go all out in that final period, at least a couple of the snaps that I was able to see. But the offensive line is going to be one of those things where that has to come together, because if it doesn't, it's just going to be an up and down, inconsistent offense, because everything rolls through the front five, that offensive line, those five guys coming together. And you've got Ruiz, you got McCoy, and you've got Saldiveri, second-year player with no experience. Penning, obviously, we know what he's going to, and rookie Fuaga right now. Like, that's fine for minicamp with no pads, but I really want to see how that's going to shake out when the pads come on, the preseason game hits, and in the early regular season, because if it's still those five, that's going to be interesting to watch it develop throughout the season. Yeah,
and you mentioned the end-of-game situation, which is something we didn't really get to see much during the 3 weeks of OTAs. So getting to look at that and really just the practice overall, what were your big takeaways outside of the guys who were there?
Yeah, I thought Derek Carr had a solid day. Started off really good, went 5 of 6 in the 7-on-7, threw a touchdown pass to Olave on a deep 9 route. Like I said, he beat Marshon Lattimore during one of the team sessions. He went back-to-back on a couple dig routes, one to Olave, one to Shaheed for big gains. And then the final session, the final team period, got him down to a certain point, but then there was a pass breakup on the end by Lattimore on Chris Olave, as I mentioned earlier. So I thought Derek Carr had an overall solid day. I thought Jake Haener had another rock-solid day. Had a freaking double move throw to Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed made a great play to go up and get it, but it was just one of those, Haener's feeling comfortable. He kind of throws it up there. He hit 4 straight completions in that end of practice, end of game type situation to set up the field goal. He was the only one to lead them to a score in that situation. Rattler got him in somewhat of a field goal position, but Groupie missed the field goal. So I think Haener had another solid day. I think Olave had a really good day. Dallin Holker had back-to-back catches in that 4 completion stretch from Jake Haener in the end-of-game situation. So again, the ball is always there. He seems to find them. Jawan Johnson was not working out today, nor was Brian Brzee. So I'm sure there was some kind of injury or illness, which is what DA alluded to. And then defensively, the guy that really stood out to me was Pete Werner. Pete Werner had 2 tackles for loss, back-to-back plays. Well, not back-to-back plays, but in the same period, in the same team session. And he is a guy that needs a bounce-back year as well, that linebacker position, because they brought some guys in here to kind of push him a little bit. So he's got to be the guy that understands what he's seeing and has to go out and make plays. So it was a good ebb and flow. There was some good defensive plays in the practice. There was some really good offensive plays in the practice. And it was an overall good day. I should say Rattler had a couple good throws during 7-on-7. I thought Haener had some good throws during 7-on-7. Rattler hit a throw to Kyle Sheets on kind of his deep out, 25 yards. Then he hit Bub Means on a kind of 15-yarder on a sail route during 7-on-7. Had some decent moments when it came to team. Not great, but decent. But nonetheless, I thought ended up being a pretty good first day of minicamp for the Saints.
One thing that stood out to me in listening to Dennis Allen's post-practice comments, he spent about 2 minutes talking about Alontae Taylor. And he mentioned, Alontae really kind of gets a bad rap from last season because he said specifically Alontae is a young guy who playing that nickel corner position was essentially in a spot that he's never played before. So to end the season like he did and to have the moments that he had at times last season, he says he was really impressed by Alontae. And Alontae is one of those guys who is really going to have to battle because Kool-Aid McKinstry, he's not on the field right now, But come training camp, DA says he does expect them to be on the field. And when that time comes, Alante is one of those guys who's really going to have to fight for that starting spot.
DA straight up said if it started right now, he'd be the guy inside. And I think that's going to be a good battle between he and Kool-Aid McKinstry and how they mix and match and where they go with certain personnel packages and personnel groupings. It was interesting during that end of game session. Saints went dime, 6 DBs on the football field. First time we'd seen that, at least with the first team all off season. So, yeah, I thought that was a pretty clear, definitive statement when it came from DA to Alante Taylor. I do think that's probably going to be a bigger battle than perhaps anyone realizes once training camp starts, because I think there's some areas of growth Alante Taylor obviously needs to hit, but they've been impressed with him so far. So, but that was always going to be the case, and there's going to be a few position competitions that are going to come to the forefront once training camp begins, in late July in California.
Now, obviously, we talked about the conversations we had with Alvin Kamara and Marshon Lattimore, and I know when it comes to a locker room session, a lot of times you're kind of all over the place. I know we got a little bit of Chase Young today, a little bit of Willie Gay today. Just in talking to the guys in the locker room, is there anything that really stood out to you?
Well, it was the first time to get face-to-face with Chase Young. He wasn't revealing too much. So I don't know what to make of that situation. DA says he's going to see Dr. Watkins, which I'm sure is a specialist with his neck surgery, to see where he's at, to get a better feel for the timeline. Chase Young was all optimistic in terms of just saying, I feel good, I feel great, I'm running, I'm lifting, this and that. But when he was asked specifically, do you expect to be on the field to start a training camp, he dropped I'm just taking it one day at a time. So I have no idea where things stand when it comes to Chase Young. And look, if he can't be there for training camp, for the start of training camp, that sucks, but I want to see him when the season starts. You know what I'm saying? I'd love to see him get some practice reps in training camp and in preseason, but if it leaks into the regular season, then obviously they have a problem, because I think that's one of the guys that they signed. They think there's an upside that they could tap into, that they could potentially benefit from in an area where, and they struggled when it came to rushing the passer a season ago, and he's obviously someone that they hope can bring some added pass rush to that defense. But as it stands right now, he's not doing anything, and he's not healthy enough to get on the field. So it's June, got plenty of time. But if we get into August and into September, then it might be a bigger storyline.
And one big question I have, we kind of touched on it in our last podcast when we were talking about, the vibe that Greg Williams brought when he came here. What's kind of the vibe at practice? This is the first day that everybody's been there. What's the feel around the Saints facility?
I thought it was a good vibe today. I really did. I thought it was good camaraderie. I thought there was a good ebb and flow. Again, you don't have the bravado and just the sheer volume, if you will, when Greg Williams was here, or even the previous coaching regime that was here. But you do have a lot of instruction. I think you have a lot of players that are intently listening, which I think is important. You can tune out certain things when you've been in the same thing for a long time. You can tune out certain things when it's just practice. But when there's a new offense, new voices, and veterans that are embracing a new offense, and that are guys that are truly open to the change and just happy to absorb this new information, I think it brings a different kind of energy that we haven't really seen in a long time. Because they haven't really or had to see it in a long time, because they've been in the same system for so long. So I think all in all, I like the vibe. The outside world, the expectation last year at this time was they were going to win the NFC South. They obviously did not. No longer the expectation from the outside world. And I actually think they like that. That it's kind of, no one's really talking about them right now, and they can just kind of hunker down and just kind of get better. But it's good for June. It's got to. We'll see if that kind of turns up on the field when the games count in September.
Right. I think the Vegas set the win total for the Saints at 7.5 this
7.5,
season.
yeah.
The over under. So we'll see where that goes. And over the next 2 days of training camp, like you said, now that we've got everybody here, what are you really looking for these next 2 days?
Well, I want to see Kamara's snap count go up a little bit. I want to see if he's going to get a little bit more action. Like I said, being there today and getting on the field, kind of. I'm trying to think of first team reps, how many he would have got. I don't even want to put a percentage on it, because I don't want to be inaccurate with that. But I want to see hopefully that kind of grow over the next 3 days. The comfortability within the offense. Olave looks fantastic. Shaheed looks great. Cedric Wilson is another guy that I really like. And then defensively, who steps up and makes plays. And I think that's certainly important. And don't discount the specialist battle as well. Groupie had, depending on how you track it, some had 4 out of 5, some had 3 out of 5 with his field goals, and then he made a field goal and missed a field goal to close out practice. So the specialist thing is something to really watch going forward as well.
And we've got a lot to look forward to. We talked to Derek Carr, I believe, on Thursday is when we get Carr, which would be the first time, I believe, since week 1 of OTA, so almost a month in between the times in which we've spoken to Derek Carr. I'm sure he's learned a lot more about this system, so I think he'll have something really insightful to say on Thursday. We don't know who we're getting on Wednesday, so that'll be a fun surprise when we get there.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see what develops tomorrow for Saints Minicamp day number 2. And they're getting closer and closer to closing out this offseason. People ask me, how they going to do? How are they going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. I just don't know. A lot of things have to come together for them to be successful. I think there's some things that I really like. There's some things that have some big question marks on. And then there's always that, what am I seeing in June? What am I seeing in July and August? But when the games actually count, is it going to be what I saw or is it going to be totally different, which seems to happen every single season.
Exactly. I remember this time last year we were hearing, the Saints were going to use Alvin Kamara in so many different ways, and we get to the season, and it was a lot of swing passes to AK. Now, obviously, that was a different regime. We'll see what this iteration of the Saints offense looks like, but it's definitely something to be excited about at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, every start of every new season is certainly something to be excited about, and all you can do is just go through the process, and right now that process is mandatory minicamp, which the Saints have completed day number 1, which means we are now complete of this Tuesday podcast. We'll be back tomorrow to wrap up Saints Minicamp practice number 2. And then Thursday, Saints Minicamp practice number 3. Pretty straightforward here. We'll break down everything that we've seen, what we heard, who we spoke with, all those things coming over the next few days. Anything else for us today?
I'm good.
He is good. I am good. That's Andre Johnson Jr. I am Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.